here we stand, at the end of an era. Well, the end of a Mistborn era, at the very least. Before the final Wax and Wane book comes out and concludes this era, though, I thought it would be fun to compile a list of the most pressing, unanswered questions from the series so far, and talk through them and their implications, one by one. We'll start with some of the questions that are most likely to be answered in this next book, and as we go down the list, we'll get into more theoretical territory. But this is by no means an exhaustive list. If there's something you really want to see me cover, or something you want to see me cover in more detail, leave a comment below and I'll consider making another of these videos with some fan favorite mysteries. For now, let's examine some of the biggest, baddest Mistborn Mist-eries out there. I'll see you after the title.
Question 1. Who is Trell?
Okay, let's start this off with the big one. Trell is a mysterious figure, definitely a shard, that makes an appearance in Mistborn Era 2. They appear to be behind much of the nefarious goings-on during the Second Era, causing Harmony loads of trouble and generally messing up his plans in unsavory ways. But who or what is Trell? The first mention of any sort of Trell appears in Mistborn's first era, popping up in one of the many religions that Sazed teaches about pre-Ascension. On screen right now is the relevant text from the Final Empire, in which Sazed preaches the religion to Vin herself. Now, this is pretty much all we know about Trellogism, the form dating back before the Final Empire at least. When the Lord Ruler ascended 1,000 years before the first era of Mistborn, most religions were stamped out and Trellogism faded into obscurity, with no known practitioners at the time of Sazed's ascension, and thus the religion died. Except, it didn't. In the second era of Mistborn, Trell re-emerges from historical irrelevancy and begins to amass followers once again. From all of the evidence we've seen so far, Trell appears to be a foreign shard co-opting a dead religion to meet its own ends. And, in addition to the resurgence of Trell worship in a religious context, we've also seen both people and Kandra influenced by Trell in more magical manners. Trell appears to have gotten itself a god medal, co-opting the Scadrian metallic art of hemalurgy to spike both humans and Kandra, influencing them and making them invisible to Harmony in ways that were not possible a few short years ago. We'll be diving deep into Trell theories soon enough, but for now, know that Trell will likely play a large part in both the Lost Metal and future Cosmere stories. Chances are, we'll know its identity sooner rather than later.
Question 2. What is the Set?
The Set is a mysterious secret society on Scadrial closely tied to, and possibly led by, Trell. In short, the Set is to Waxillian Ladrian what Trell is to Harmony. They're the ones that have been causing Wax and the greater Elendel Basin all sorts of distress and grief throughout the series thus far, and they aren't stopping anytime soon. I talked about them in detail in my Cosmere Secret Societies video, and not much has changed since I posted that. But since then, I have become more convinced upon a reread of the series so far that the Set is taking orders from Trell in some way, shape, or form, which is something I was a bit wishy-washy about in that previous video. It should also be noted that the highest ranked member we've seen of the Set so far is actually Wax's sister, Telsin Ladrian. Wait. Telsin. Trell. Zoom in. Enhance. Oh my god. We've done it. Telsin is Trell confirmed! But in all actuality, we're going to be seeing quite a bit more of this mysterious organization in the near future, and we'll most likely be getting some answers on their goals, motivations, and whether or not they are actually being controlled by Trell itself, who or whatever that may be.
Question 3. Scadrian Thunder from Down Under.
As far back as early Era 1, Mistborn fans have been speculating about the mysterious Southern Scadrians, a group of people that the Lord Ruler set aside on another continent and seems to have just kind of forgot about. But they've been around the whole time, and by the Second Era, have progressed farther technologically than any cosmere civilization we've seen up to this point in the timeline. Though allomancy and feruchemy are rare among their people, the abilities do indeed exist, and these magic users have been very busy, implementing creative uses of allomancy, feruchemy, and hemalurgy to create new and interesting devices. They have devices that can be used to communicate with people, devices used for combat. Oh, and did I mention they have giant freaking zeppelins whizzing around? Yeah. The needs of their people push the Southern Scadrians to innovate much faster than was thought possible, and certainly much faster than the peoples of the Elendel Basin, who are living relatively comfortable lives in a land literally designed for them to flourish in. Eventually, the Southern Scadrians started expanding and pushing north, coming upon their sister continent and crashing their airship right onto it. It would sure be a shame if someone with nefarious purposes found it and used it to make weapons and stuff, right? So anyways, the set finds the crashed airship. They've been disassembling it and using its parts to make their own new weapons and all sorts of other gadgets, all without letting the general population of Elendel Basin know what they've found. To summarize, by the end of Bands of Mourning, the existence of Southern Scadrians is known by the general population, and contact begins between these two disparate civilizations. Where we go from here is anyone's guess, but I have a feeling that we'll be learning a lot more about their people, civilization, culture, and uses of magic during the course of the Lost Metal. Oh, and also Kelsier's been doing all sorts of stuff down there. But don't you worry, we'll get to him in just a bit.
Question 4. What's ATM's deal anyway?
Okay, this is a big one. To refresh your memory, atium is Ruin's god metal, or at least some sort of god metal alloy. The word of Brandon's on this get a little bit confusing. Either way, atium was seen primarily in Mistborn's first era, and when burned by an allomancer, they see shadows of the near future. This significantly improves the allomancer's ability to excel in combat and gives a monumental edge to whoever burns it. Feruchemically, atium stores the age of a user, allowing them to spend time much older while storing age and spend time younger while tapping the metal mind. Like all feruchemy, the end result is a net neutral here, with a user only able to become young for as long as they spend old. This can, of course, be completely broken by compounding mechanics. The Lord Ruler himself used this exact method to stay the same age for close to 1,000 years by storing age inside of atium reserves, burning those reserves, and then storing that same investiture back inside of another atium reserve, effectively utilizing an investiture positive magic system to fuel and enhance an investiture neutral system. Atium compounding has never been widespread for one reason though: the lack of accessible atium. And during the last section of Hero of Ages, almost all atium in existence is used up by Elend's final stand by he and his atium mistings, effectively preventing Ruin from regaining this cache of investiture and quite literally destroying the world. All that's left after the Catacondra is a bag smuggled away by Marsh, which is presumably being used to keep him alive all of these years after Harmony's ascension. This is the last bit of atium that is known to be left in the world, with presumably no more able to coalesce in the pits of Hathsin after Harmony's ascension. It should also be noted that atium's hemalurgic power involves stealing any investiture that a person carries, including any magical abilities such as allomancy, breaths, and in theory even a radiant bond. In the Second Era, atium is commonly referred to as the Lost Metal for its complete absence, and its continued importance in the Mistborn storyline leaves many questions to be answered. For instance, is it possible to be manufactured without Harmony's consent? Is it still growing on Scadrial in addition to Harmony's et metal, or has the time for atium generation completely passed? With its hemalurgic properties as powerful as they are, will we even see this metal again after Marsh has used the last of his stores? And most importantly, how will it shape the future of Scadrial and the cosmere as a whole? If I had to guess, I would put money on the final Wax and Wane book going all out in answering most, if not all, of these questions. Its title is, after all, The Lost Metal. Let's see how this next book plays out, and then we'll pop back over here to theorize about everything that we've found out.
Question 5. What are the capabilities of Et Metal?
Okay, Et Metal. Et Metal is, very simply, Harmony's god metal. First appearing after the Catacondra, Et Metal was first discovered by the southern Scadrians, and has been used to help develop their technology beyond that of the north. They used some sort of curious boxes to harness its investiture, slowly burning it to power devices such as machinery and weapons. The southern Scadrians have somehow discovered a few interesting things about this metal. First of all, its effects are able to be turned on and off with a switch, as we see demonstrated during Bands of Mourning. It's also able to replicate the effects of any allomantic and possibly ferrochemical power using whatever other metal is in its vicinity, which opens up a whole Pandora's box of possible uses and abuses. It's also extremely reactive and immediately explodes when it comes into contact with water. Not much is known about this new metal other than that. We've only seen it used a handful of times, and we've never actually met an Et Metal misting, fairing, or hemalurgist. It's unknown if they even exist at all, which begs the question, what are the capabilities and limits of Et Metal? Do mistings and fairings even exist? What are its hemalurgic properties? We can safely presume we'll be learning much more about this when the last Wax and Wane book comes out and the technology of the southern Scadrians starts to slowly creep into the consciousness of the north. I'll be making a video diving much farther into theories on the possible utilizations, effects, and implications of this new god metal, which you can expect sometime before the final Wax and Wane book in November.
Question 6. Kelsier.
Oh yeah, you knew this was coming. Let's do it. Kelsier has been working behind the scenes all the way since Mistborn Book 1, and has been a very, very busy boy. We have seen him involved in several pivotal events leading up to the Catacondra, culminating in his brief ascension to preservation. Beyond that, he's been experimenting with hemalurgy, leading the southern Scadrians, and trying desperately to find a way to get off-world. Bookborn and I had a super in-depth video going over his character and the storylines he's been involved in, which you can view by clicking in the top right corner of your screen right now. Suffice it to say though, Kelsier's storyline is far from over and his role to play in the cosmere seems to be only beginning. Which leaves us with more than a few questions. I think we'll see a few of these answered in the next book, but if I had to put a wager on it, I think Sanderson is going to be saving most of the more interesting Kelsier parts until Mistborn Era 3 and possibly even Era 4. So, in no particular order, here is an extensive list of questions pertaining to Kelsier. What exactly has Kelsier been up to since the events in Mistborn Era 1 and the Catacondra? When did he find out about the southern Scadrians and decide to help or lead them? Did he lead them, or was he influential in a more strictly religious manner? How much did the southern Scadrians know about who he is, and how long did he hold influence over their people? How much has he been able to accomplish with his experiments in hemalurgy? What have his relations with Harmony looked like in recent years? Is he tied to the set? How did he create the Bands of Mourning? We know he is involved with a certain off-world secret society. Did he found them? Did he just find them and take over? What is he trying to accomplish through them? And most importantly, what are his ultimate driving goals and motivations?
Question 7. Scadrian's role in the cosmere.
Okay, let's start diving into some of the questions that will most likely not be answered anytime soon. First off, what role does Scadrial have to play in the greater arc in the cosmere? I think we can assume that at some point, interplanetary conflict is inevitable. As we start to see worlds come together, we also begin to see potential wars bubbling to the surface. Conflicts over land, rights, magic, and shards themselves seem to be where the cosmere is headed, and with each book released, we start to see more hints that these shards will go to great lengths to protect their territory and peoples. We've also seen ample evidence that some shards are beginning to push outwards, conquering new lands and establishing footholds on other planets. Now, this is tagged only for Mistborn spoilers, so I won't go into too much detail on potential shardic conflicts here, but I think we can safely assume a few things about Scadrial's role to play in future conflicts. Now, there's two main shards that seem to desire rapid expansion: autonomy and odium. Without too much evidence to support this claim, I'm going to wager that one of these shards will be a greater threat in the shorter term, think Era 3, while the other will play a large role in the cosmere-spanning arc of Mistborn Era 4. I'm not going to go into too much more speculation on this until we find out which shard Trell is. I could see it being either odium or autonomy, but that's a video for another day. Trust me, we'll get there. Scadrial itself has a few factors that will help determine which direction the planet will trend towards in the future. Harmony seems to want a relatively pacifist role in the cosmere, but events surrounding Trell and Kelsier's machinations could very well push him into a more active role in interplanetary conflict. It all kind of depends on who starts shooting who first and what they're looking to gain. Whether it be land, technology, or shards they desire, someone is going to start into motion a large-scale conflict, and its effects will be pivotal to both Scadrial and the cosmere story as a whole.
Question 8. Faster than light travel.
Though it appears to be a ways away, I don't think it's too soon to be asking some big questions about faster-than-light travel and how it can be accomplished through Scadrian technological advancement. With interplanetary conflict looming, we know that it is going to be important for Scadrian peoples to travel long distances very fast, and Brandon has hinted before that it is possible using Scadrian technology. Bendalloy and cadmium seem like the most likely candidates to be used in space travel, but these come with a few questions in and of themselves. As a very quick refresher, bendalloy slows down time around the user, allowing them to move incredibly fast inside of their speed bubble. Cadmium does the opposite, significantly speeding up the passage of time outside of the user's bubble. When combined, they cancel each other out. It should also be noted that objects moving in and out of these bubbles behave very strangely and erratically. Something about momentum, the passage of time, magic, or all of the above coming together. Cosmere physics can get weird real quick. We have no real idea how these would work to speed up or slow down time in a way that makes traveling through the stars possible, or what kind of resources that would require. We also have no idea how a speed bubble would get anchored to the ship itself. We've gotten hints that cadmium and bendalloy savants would be able to move their speed bubbles with them, but it's unknown how this could be accomplished by a mechanical means such as the Southern Scadrians use, or if it is even possible at all. Now, metal would seem to be a good place to start theorizing about as a fuel source because we've seen it used before to power allomantic abilities. It would make sense that this is how Harmony would want his societies to progress, as he theoretically holds direct control over the amount of metal that can actually be produced, or at least mined. However, this does not stop others from using it for nefarious purposes, as we see in literally the first interaction that our protagonists have with the metal. Ultimately, anything that we put together is pure theorizing until we get more information on the uses of bendalloy, cadmium, how they play with metal, and the limitations of the Southern Scadrians' forms of mechanical allomancy and feruchemy. Hopefully, we'll be learning a little bit more about these in the next book, but my instinct tells me we won't see any direct applications of faster-than-light travel until late Mistborn Era 3, if not a little bit later.
Question 9. Harmony's future.
Holding both the powers of ruin and preservation, Harmony would appear to be the most powerful shard in existence. at least on paper. In reality, he finds the two opposite intents pulling at each other, which handicaps his ability to accomplish almost anything significant. With the forces of Trell encroaching on his land and the future of the cosmere looming, Harmony is going to have to do something drastic to wield his shards effectively, and he's going to have to do it soon. But the question remains, what is there to do? I think there's a few potential paths that Harmony can pursue to better be able to control and harness the power that he currently wields. The books seem to hint that he needs to find someone to act on his behalf, and a good portion of evidence points to this person being lmao. We'll talk about that possibility in more detail in an upcoming video focusing specifically on Wax, but for now, let's look at some other potential options. The most obvious path I could see would be to absorb another shard in some way, but the mechanics of how that would actually happen are vague at best. And there's no telling what other sorts of consequences this would bring upon Harmony's ability to effectively wield his powers. It would all depend on the shard, I suppose. My personal theory is that Harmony will find a way to incorporate autonomy into his arsenal of shards, allowing him to somehow control the powers of preservation and ruin, well, autonomous of one another. Other options Harmony might be considering would be Dominion and Devotion, who are currently shattered and consisting of the door over on Cell. We know Cell will play a large role in the future of the cosmere, but Harmony's part in all of that remains to be seen. Another scenario that might happen is that Harmony splits back into two shards, willingly or unwillingly. There is some evidence to suggest that if Harmony were to split in two, he wouldn't jump immediately back to preservation and ruin, but would become a new mix of the two shards. It would appear likely that the outcome of this would be the combined power of Harmony fracturing into two smaller pieces, Harmony and Discord. There is even some evidence that this is already happening, but we have nothing concrete to go on yet. While Harmony's ultimate fate remains to be seen, I think we can safely say that whatever role he will play in the future will shape the cosmere in new, interesting, exciting, and terrifying ways.
Question 10. The far future of Scadrial.
This question is, by far, the most abstract and impossible to predict of all the questions we've posed so far. But hey, let's take a crack at it anyways. There are a million variables that are all going to come into play to shape the far future of Scadrial. There's Trell, Kelsier, faster than light space travel, Harmony, Wax Chondra, and galactic conflict being just a few off, the top of my head. But we do know a few things. We know Scadrial has a large role to play in the future of the cosmere, and the last era is set to be a space opera incorporating the whole cosmere into Stormlight-sized novels and featuring a diverse cast of interplanetary travelers. We also know that these will be the final books in the cosmere chronologically, and will tie everything up. Beyond that, we know very little of what the future of Scadrial looks like. So, what are your thoughts? What conflicts do you think will arise, and which planets and shards do you think are most likely to pair up? And, lastly, what do you think the ultimate fate of Scadrial, Harmony, and the shards is going to be? Rust and Ruin, I've had fun talking about all this with you. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, do all the YouTube things so this channel gets exposure or whatever. I'll be back very soon with another video, this time talking about lmao, and plenty more videos to come before the conclusion of Mistborn Era 2 this November. I will see you folks then. Have a fantastic day.